In this part of the course, we'll start to build our sample app. But before we do that, I'd like to take you through the different ways of loading App Designer from the Syspro menu and also take you through its user interface. Once you've loaded Syspro, you'll probably end up on the Home tab like this. If you move along to the Administration tab here, and if you look in the customization section, there's a section called Application Designer. This is a drop-down menu with a number of options. The one that we want for designing applications is the first option. Further courses will take you through the other options, so don't worry too much about that. So that will be the first way of loading Application Designer. Alternatively, you could use the Syspro Run a Program command here, and the program or app designer is called imp IDE, and if you enter that and run the program, that will load the program as well. Personally, I have it on my favorites, as you might imagine, and once it's on the favorites, all I've got to do is click that to load. So that's what I'm going to do. This is Application Designer's initial screen. So what I wanted to do is just go over some of the options you have at this stage. Let's have a quick look at the file option here. Recent applications gives me a list of the recent applications I've been working on. Simply clicking on one of these will load that application for editing. The option to show a help panel controls whether a help pane appears in the bottom right-hand corner here in the Properties tab, and we'll see in a short while that as we click on the properties of a control or indeed the application itself, then the online help will tell us what the options are and actually what that property controls. The Open option here allows us to open any existing application that we've got, and you can see a variety of bits of information there, and we'll be covering some of the detail in a minute. At the bottom of this list, though, interestingly, there is a series of sample applications that are shipped automatically with App Designer, which show how some of the controls are actually used. Some of them are fun. The cocktail one in particular I find rather amusing. But if you should want to edit these or indeed have a look at the code, you can't do it straight from the sample, but you can actually copy them, rename them, and then you can edit them and hack them around to your heart's content. The other thing about this open application pane here is this is also where you might delete an application. So for if you've been messing around creating examples and testing and things, if you highlight an app and press the delete key on your keyboard, you'll get an option to delete that app as well. So that's quite a useful pane there. The project option here is a feature which allows you to collate multiple applications into a deployable project. So for example, if you were developing maybe a vertical module which meant that you've got a number of applications, you can pull them all together in a project, and it will create a zip file, and then you can send it to a customer site or indeed maybe your live server from a test server and deploy it onto that server. We'll be covering this later in the course. The view option here controls a number of things. Basically, can you see the start page? Well, you can see here the tab on the right-hand side gives me a list of the applications I've been working on recently. Also, though, notice that at the bottom, you can use the hyperlink straight through to the App Designer forum on the Syspro forums website. It's a really useful place to ask questions. And also, App Designer has its own web portal, which has the user guide on it, these course videos, which you'll be looking at, and a number of useful bits of collateral that are going on there. And notice here, we can also have an option to show the page on startup. So as you load Application Designer, this pane would pop up and say, well, what application do you actually want to edit? The other options in the view menu here, toolbox, application, project explorer, and so on, control whether you see these tabs on the left-hand side here. So let's have a quick look at those. on the toolbox is a list of the controls that you can add to an application, and each control will create a pane in your application, and the pane will have a load of individual properties which you set to control what it's actually doing. For the application, as you build your application, there's an application explorer which will start to show you the toolbars and the different controls that you've added, and their naming conventions and so on like that. If you have created projects, and as I say, we'll be seeing these later in the course, you can have a look at the projects and look at the project explorer there. And we will be touching briefly in this course on data sources, but there is a full-blown course on data sources and so on like that. We can explore it. But to begin with, what we're going to be looking at primarily is the toolbox and the application explorer. So what we'll be doing next is we'll be pressing the new button to create a brand new application, and then we'll start building our sample. Once you've pressed the new application button, Application Designer prompts us now to give the application a name and a title. Now remember from earlier on that the application name is the same as the program name. It has to be 6 characters long, so let's call it something like Training Customer Query 1, tab off that, and we'll give it a name, Customer Query, tab off that. Now notice straight away that as soon as we start tabbing off these fields here in the design canvas, and this is where our application will start to come together, it's already started to react. Our title has come up here, and we've now got the beginnings of a toolbar going on, but we'll be coming on to that a little bit later on. Once I've done this, there are a couple of things I like to do straight away. First of all, if we come to the bottom here, we've got some properties about the author, the release version, and some notes. And I find that it is absolutely crucial that you start right at the beginning to at least identify who wrote this and therefore who's responsible, and at least start to document what it does. So let's put this in. And we put some notes here. This. Oops. This is a test app for my course, or something like that. Now, just notice here this option here. Once we've ticked this, it's an option to show these notes in an about button, and we'll be seeing that a little bit later on. Really quite useful, because really here you could put a little bit of an explanation of why the app exists and so on like that. And then there's a free format category. So this allows you to, in the open window that we saw earlier on, to sort by category. So you may say something like, I don't know, training app, so that you can group them all together. Now, that's all very well there, but also if you just scroll up a little bit here, we also have an option called version history. Now, this is really, really quite important, because as you may well create your first release, you may well be getting feedback. There might be bugs in your app. God forbid there's a bug. But there also may be changes to functionality and requirements in the life of the app. And this is where you would record this sort of thing. So if we have a quick look at version history, we can add a new item here. So we might say 1.000 as a date, modified it by, well, I'm logged in as admin. You could put an event ID if you want to, but I'll just put something in there. And then this might say this is the initial release or something along those lines, and we can save that. And then what you'll find is that as you add notes, version history, a complete history of the changes that you've made will build up with the app, and it ships with the app as well. So we will close that. And at this stage, what I want to do is I'm just going to save this now, and then I just want to discuss one thing before we start to build our app. Before we go charging off creating our sample app, I just wanted to take a few minutes to discuss things like a specification. What you'll find as you go through this course and get more familiar with App Designer, and certainly as you go through the other courses, is that App Designer can create applications very, very quickly. And the temptation, therefore, is to go charging off, bang a toolbar in, bang a few controls and panes in, and design on the fly. In my experience, whilst that's great for learning, it's not a good practice when you are writing stuff for end users. I'd strongly recommend that you have a specification, even if it's as basic as a bit of paper like this with a sketch on it. As you can see here, what I've done is I have a little bit of a toolbar, file pop-up menu, it's got a close button on it, and when I close it, I want to exit the app. I've got a customer combo, got some logic here, so when the customer number changes, I want to do a query for the ARS QRY business object, populate the forms and a list view. Here's one form for basic information, another for financial information. Now, with App Designer, you will find, even with a spec like this, you'll get tempted to say, oh, wouldn't it be great to have a chart or a XAML form or this or that? My advice would be try and get the basics and the logic working first, get it accepted by the end user, and then start it up later on as a version 2 or a version 3. So hopefully this little specification, as we work through our sample, will become something like this. So that's enough of me spouting on about specifications. Let's get cracking and have a go and create our sample app. Okay, so let's get cracking and we'll start our sample app. So first things first would be to load App Designer. Now, so what we want to be able to do is load our app that we started a little bit earlier on called TRNCQ1. Because I have got this option here, show page on startup, this is the startup page, this has popped up and you can see TRNCQ1 here, so I can just click it on there. Remember that I could use my recents and it'll be on the top because that's the last one we were messing with, or you could just use open. And it'll be in the list there. So to make it easy, we'll just pop and select that. Okay, so here we are now, exactly where we were before. But now that we're in an existing app, a number of other bits and pieces have popped up here. So let's have a quick look at that. The Edit Applications Detail button allows you to get at the application properties, which we were editing earlier on. And it's a quick way of going on there. And whilst we're looking at the application properties, there is one option which I omitted to flag with you, and that is this option here in development. Now, what happens here is if you flag this as in development, then list views and form layouts are not remembered from one run to the next, which is actually quite useful because as you're designing things, you don't really want the previous run of the application you were testing to remember what was going on. But we'll see this a little bit later on. I'm going to deliberately leave it off at the moment because we'll see what happens if you forget to click it on. But just to reiterate, there's online help down here which explains what it does and so on like that, and we'll just leave that deliberately off. Obviously, in this button, which we'll be using a little bit later on, that will edit our VB script. We have what we call data sources. Now, we will be touching on these because we need to run the data sources later in our sample app. There is a full-blown course on this, so I'm only going to be doing the very, very bare minimum on here. But as a summary, it's the ability to be able to define where data is coming from, whether they're business objects or SQL databases. You can pre-design queries and then get App Designer to automatically execute them under certain conditions, which is great. We've got the run command here. We'll be using this extensively. This allows us to run our app from within the editor. Basically, it launches another instance of Syspro, runs our app, allows us to test it, and then we can close it again. It just stops us having to exit the editor, go to the run command, run our app, and go in and out of the editor all the time. But also notice here that you can also run this and it will stop and ask for a parameter. So like many of the standard Syspro programs, an App Designer app can take a single 255 character runtime parameter, such as a customer number, for instance, or maybe an order number, line number, that kind of thing, which will allow you to go from one application to another passing this parameter. The view here, I think we've already briefly discussed. The start page, which we saw earlier on, and then these other ones control what's going on over here on the left-hand side. And design mode, once you've sort of designed some application, if you press this, it removes all the panes and shows you your app on the screen as it would appear when it's running. Quite useful just to double check that what you're developing is actually quite useful. So what we're going to do now is start to add a toolbar. The toolbar that we're going to add is one of the primary interfaces between the user and the rest of your application. In our sample now, we're going to be asking for a customer number, but obviously you may have combo boxes, you might have check boxes, you might have text boxes. So it is important to understand how the toolbar actually works. What we're going to be doing as a starter is add our first series of buttons, which will be the file and the close button. And to design a toolbar, we go to our application details. If you've moved off to another part of the your app, don't remember, you just press this button here and you'll go straight back to editing the application details. And down here, you'll find design toolbar. So if you click that, we've now got another tab appearing. And it's now asking us to what we want to do. And since we don't have any buttons on the toolbar, our only option is to add them. So we want a file pop-up with a close button inside it. So we will choose a pop-up and we'll give it a file, a name called file. We tab off it. Now, a couple of things have happened now. First of all, as soon as we've done it, you see our design canvas now is reacting to what we're doing. So we've got our file here. We've got an ampersand in front of the F so that you can use your shortcut keys and things like that as normal. Key, though, to this is the system has allocated an event ID of 1001. Now, this is important because when every single control put on a toolbar will have a unique event ID, and when something happens to that control, the event ID is one of the parameters passed through to your VB script, and therefore you can start to detect who has done what to what control on the toolbar. So we will add a close button. So we need a button. We're going to call it close, and you'll see that that's popped up here. And we've got an event ID of 1002, and they will normally increment one at a time as we're going along. Now we want that closed inside the file. It's very simple. We simply right-click the toolbar, go to Customize, that out of the way, click on the close, drag it sideways and down, and hey presto, it's actually linked into that pop-up, which is great. Now what we want is we want our customer combo, so we select our combo. And do that. Now, App Designer's popped up and said, is the control editable? What it's saying to you is, do you intend to be typing any information into this combo box or not? Now, clearly, we're going to be typing a customer number in. But if it was a combo box of fixed options, we would answer no to this because we just simply say we don't want people typing in it. We're going to select whatever's in the list. So we're going to be saying yes to that. And we're going to be putting customer in here, and we'll tab off that. Now, a couple of things have happened which aren't immediately obvious. The first thing is the event IDs jumped to 38,000. You think, oh, hang on a minute, it was 1002 a minute ago. And also notice our combo box here has got a browse button attached to it. And you think, well, hang on, I didn't ask for a browse button either. Now, this is because App Designer has detected the word customer, and it says, I know what a customer combo box object is. Its event ID throughout the rest of Syspro is 38,000. And because I know that, I can start to inherit some of its behaviors, such as having a browse button. And we'll see in a short while that when we press the browse button, we will have inherited the standard Syspro browse. we'll just add another button, which is the help button we want here. And you can see now the event ID is dropped back to 1003, which is fine. I think what we'll do is we will tack on a little bit of an icon here. And we might want to say begin group. So that puts a little line there. I mean, there's loads of other options that you can mess around with to your heart's content. It's great. So that's fine. We haven't wired up anything in VBScript for these buttons to do, but let's just run it and let's see what we've got. I'm just going to be using this run application. So if we just press this, it'll launch Syspro in another instance and run our app. So it's going to be saving the changes we've made. Now look at the file name we discussed earlier on. Great. So what we've got here now, we've got our file and our close, our help button. But in our customer now, it's asking us to enter a customer number. If we hit a browse button here, up pops the standard browse that you're familiar with in customer inquiry and things like that. Select any customer, but if we just double click on a customer, it pops us into the combo. So without any programming whatsoever, other than just saying I want a customer combo on my toolbar, I've started to inherit all the things that a standard Syspro customer combo can do. Now, whilst we're here, there are a couple of other things that I wanted to show you. Obviously, if we're inheriting look and feel and behavior from Syspro, how on earth does somebody differentiate between a standard Syspro program and one written by an end user or maybe another partner or something like that? It's actually quite difficult, and certainly from a support point of view, you know, there'll be no difference, and support teams might be getting queries from all sorts of apps written by third parties they know nothing about. So what Syspro have done, all their standard programs, in the top left-hand corner, they have the Syspro logo here. Any app developed by App Designer has a little blue square. So that's the first indication that a support team would be dealing with something that isn't standard Syspro. Now, it might still be written by the partner, but at least it's not standard Syspro. And secondly, if you remember that we looked at properties and we were putting in the author and some text. Well, if we go to the cogs here and have a look at the about this application, what we've got here is its name, its title, who did it, the version number, when I last amended it, and where it actually is. And those are the notes that I typed in. And if I'd done multi-lines, there would be it would extend the about box. And this is why it's so critical to document things as you're going along. So straight away, a support person say, hang on a minute, I can see this is an App Designer app, and now I've got some text about what on earth this is supposed to do, and you can make a decision on it. And we'll be coming back time and time again to documentation for developers. So what we're going to be doing now is we'll move on to the next section, which will be to wire this toolbar up to some VBScript and get it doing something.